staying with us, you're watching Standpoint. President Bola Tinubu has been making new appointments recently. Ministries, departments, and agencies, especially departments and agencies, have been getting new boards and management. Some members were retained. Some of them are getting new members. But also the EFCC also got new leadership after the resignation of Abdulrasheed Bawa. And there is now a new man in charge of EFCC. He's acting at the moment, subject to confirmation by the Senate. He is Olukoyede, and he's going to is the executive chairman of the Economic and Financial Crimes Commission. The president also approved the appointment of Mohammed Hamajoda as secretary of the EFCC on a renewable term of 5 years. Now, let's talk about all of these appointments, and then we will zero into that of the EFCC as we speak with lawyer Evans Ofeli. Good to have you join us.
Thank you.
So let me first start by getting broadly your thought on all of the appointments made recently, and if in your opinion, they satisfy the federal character policy, as it were, or principle rather.
Well, the appointment made so far from all the agencies and ministries, they are one that if you look at them critically, you'll find out that there are certain agencies of government that have been moribund as a result of weak leadership. And then some are also plagued by corruption allegations and issues of mismanagement or abuse of public office. So those appointments are actually very okay. The one that has to do with, I think, 9 posts and some other ones, and then now the EFCC appointment. So it's a good thing that the president is revamping and overhauling the entire process of governance in the light that is being done.
However, okay, go ahead. Please go ahead.
Okay, I want to talk about the EFCC now.
No, I wanted to ask you again before we get to that of the EFCC, because you mentioned the night post, and night post. Some people are wondering, look, is it still as functional as it was earlier? And then when you look at this appointment made, because Nigerians have always talked about having stronger institutions, are we on that path of now having stronger institutions?
Yeah, it's a gradual process. This stronger we are talking about is also a subject of having strong persons with integrity. You see, an institution is a human construct. An institution is strong to the extent that it has people who are of strong integrity and who are devoted and patriotic enough to uphold the ethos and the duties of that. As much as we have strong institutions, we need to also talk about the fact that these strong institutions will not work itself through the process except you have strong persons manning these institutions. And that's exactly what the president is doing in the light of what I have seen, except for the little agitations that we're having in terms of certain appointments that people feel they are not in the right, they are not rightly seen.
And I know you are eager to talk about that of the EFCC. So I was saying that I know you're eager to talk about that of the EFCC. So let's get into it. We saw how there was so much, especially from the anti-corruption CSOs asking for the removal of Abdulrasheed Bawa. Even they were against his appointment in the first place. He has now resigned, and a new man has been appointed. What's your thoughts on the new person, Olukoyede, who has now been appointed?
From the look of things and from the experience I think he has gathered in the course of his practice of law and other extra issues that he has undertaken over the years, he is actually qualified. But if you look at the act, the extant law that established the EFCC, in that section 2, okay, you'll find out that the requisite experience, which is 15 years as required by law, it falls short of it. And the fact that it says whoever should be the chairman must be someone who is retired or a serving government security agent, the person who has worked in. It is quite instructive to note that when these appointments are made like this and they do not meet the requirement, it is only right that it is reviewed in the light of the question of the issues of law. Because you cannot have laws, okay, and then not have to obey those laws. So if you look at the laws set down for that institution, he falls below the mark. And there's nothing wrong about appointing someone and finding out that he's not qualified for the position. If he's not qualified statutorily, or by experience, or by ranking, because say the person alternatively should have attained a rank of an assistant commissioner of police. Okay, he doesn't have that too. Okay, so I think that the president will need to walk that appointment back, and the earlier is done, the better. Concocted in the realm of error, and such errors can be reworked in the light of that appointment.
Let me come in, Mr. Evans Ufeli, because there are people who have said, and I've heard lawyers argue, that that act, you know, the part 2 of that act that talks about the appointment of the man at the helm of affairs, you know, at EFCC, doesn't specify the kind of experience that the person should have. It just says that it is blanket. It says 15 years experience, and I want you to clarify this, that it just is blanket and says 15 years experience without particularly specifying whether that experience should be within the EFCC. But as long as you have with a lawmaking or a law enforcement kind of experience, that also falls within, you know, that 15 years. And that Olukoyede has 22 years of experience, and so perhaps, you know, that falls within that category.
He has 22 years post-call. Okay, post-call. In as much as the Act did not mention the experience under reference, if you look at it, it talks about 15 years. And then that 15 years, we are looking at the context for which that law is couched. 15 years, you must have this experience within the scope of the work that is given. Okay, it's a government security agent. Okay, so he was practicing law outside the sphere. He became a chief of staff of Magu in 2016, and then was later appointed secretary in 2018. Okay, cumulatively, if you look at what he has, it's not, you cannot take that experience. It's like saying that, okay, I, for example, who have been practicing law for 15 years, and you will now say that because I have more than 15 years, therefore I can become the head of the EFCC. It's not within the context of that security matters as it relates to the EFCC. My 15 years experience does not sink into the context of that law. The express mention of one thing exclude the other. You cannot read that law, you cannot read into it what is not there, and you cannot also read into it the context for which it was not driven under. So I think that this matter interpretation, the final interpretation will be the law court. The law court will be able to interpret that, and you don't need
and I was just going to ask you that isn't that subject to interpretation, because if there is no specific, if the law isn't specific as to whether the experience should be had, and whether it's within, I know you're saying that it's within the context of that act, because that act is called the EFCC Act, and I understand what you're saying. But as somebody who did not study law, because when you come across that, it has to be interpreted. If that act says 15 years experience without specifying particularly the kind of experience, and you have someone who has 22 years of experience in corporate intelligence and fraud management, if that is not within that scope of the EFCC Act?
You see, you have to look at the interpretation section of that law, okay, and the context of the act. That will be in that law. Okay, so until that section, interpretation section you get a hold of it, because there's a sense in which you can say that because the 15 years is not tied to any matter in terms of the law, it would mean that 15 years could be outside the EFCC and 15 years could be counted just within the EFCC. There's a sense in which that argument can fly, okay? But the argument will be terminated or will be deflated when there's a proper interpretation as to the interpretation section. Every law have an interpretation section where every word used will be the meaning derived, what they call a contextualization and substitution. the meaning that word hold in that law is interpreted outside the act. It's not a 15 years experience outside the act. In a very, very clear terms, it is not. So, but the final authority to putting this to rest will be the court of law, wherein you just ask for interpretation, in which case you are not necessarily asking the court to keep it or cancel it or make it null and void. But you're asking that in the light of the provisions of the EFCC Act, the court should interpret what 15 years experience doesn't mean 15 years from the particular point that he got into the EFCC.
But does this also speak to how we write in terms of when we put our acts together, acts for establishing certain agencies, and just generally the Constitution? Because people will say that lawyers always find a loophole, and so that these are the kind of loopholes. And I'm speaking generally now, not particularly on this EFCC Act. Lawyers always find a loophole, and these are the kind of loopholes where our laws are not particularly specific. Do you think that going forward, when we make laws, there should be a level of specificity to it, that it is really particular and specific?
Yes, you see, even when it's not specific in the face value, the interpretation section, that's why I have interpretation section that keys it in, key every word into context. Okay. You cannot have a perfect law. All laws have loopholes. All laws have certain lacuna here and there because there is no foreseeable end in the human experience. So because there's no foreseeable end in the human experience, human beings couch these laws. That is why the courts like to interpret it from the intention of the legislature. And they use the rules of interpretation, the literal rule, the mischief rule, and the golden rule to determine what the intention of the legislature was as at the time that law was being enacted. That is why that is done. But, generally speaking, if you are talking about an act, we're discussing an act, it couldn't have been an experience outside the act. Okay, it could not have been an experience outside the commission because the commission is the environment under which that law was designed. Okay, and the desire here is to find someone who has risen through the rank in terms of experience and ranking in that kind of operation, okay, to help the court. But on the court interpretation to that effect, the final word to this cannot be determined by this interview.
All right. So, of course, you're right, and I will wait for that legal interpretation whenever it comes. But I also wanted to ask you, let's move away now to the EFCC itself. We've had police officers, who rise to that particular rank, but now we're seeing a lawyer. I know that Farida Waziri was also a police officer and a lawyer, but this is a lawyer. And EFCC has always had issues with prosecution. Would this have any impact on how EFCC will investigate and prosecute cases?
EFCC, I'm not getting it right in terms of prosecution and the way they go about investigation. Sometimes they invite you, they serve you an invitation letter, the official, yes, legal, and they just keep you for months and all that. So a lawyer in the helm of affairs of the EFCC in this regard, even though Ribadu was also a lawyer, but this kind of lawyer that have practiced law himself, when they say so many people are lawyers, virtually everybody you find they are lawyers, but there are those who have practiced law before they get into it. So by the time, in this case, when you have a lawyer in that seat, it is expected that we should have a change. We should have a robust EFCC. Because if a lawyer goes there and he messes up his own profession, there's a sense in which issues of contempt will be raised and professional negligence. And you can even also go ahead, proceed to take him before the disciplinary.
All right, Evans Ophelia, I'm going to take a break now. It seems to be... All right, Evans, let me put you on hold. I'm just going to take a break. We seem to be having... we've been trying to push through the network issues in our conversation. We'll take a break. Hopefully, we'll try and rectify it in the course of the break and return and continue. Hopefully, a smooth conversation with you. All right, thanks for staying with us on Standpoint. We're still talking about the recent appointments made by the president. and especially that of the EFCC chairman, where he has now appointed Olukoyede as the executive chairman, and that's subject to Senate confirmation. We're still speaking with a lawyer, Evans Ufeli, who is interpreting some of these issues for us. But just before that break, we were talking about whether having a lawyer at the helm of affairs at the anti-corruption agency would help in terms of prosecution, and you were speaking to that. Please go on.
There's a sense in which that will help, because one of the major problems the EFCC have had is the lack of adherence to the rule of law. It has been from one issue of abuse of the rules of law to the other. Sometimes, like I said before, you are invited, an invitation letter is extended to you to come and make clarification. You get there, they convert the invitation to an arrest. That is wrong. Sometimes they keep you in their facility for more than for months, and they tell you that they are looking for evidence, that they are investigating the matter and all that. But you know, investigation is you are supposed to conclude your investigation, or at least get to a point, a considerable point of reference before you make an arrest or invite. Okay, because the human right of the citizen is also as valuable as whatever case you are investigating. Okay, yeah, the human conscience and the humanity of the human person, as stated by the Constitution under the fundamental rights in Chapter 4 of the Constitution, is expected to be protected. It is sacred. But our law enforcement agencies, especially the EFCC, most times do not care whether, in fact, once you get to their facility, they don't even think you have a right, okay, or you have they just make things so difficult and all that. So having a lawyer here, there are several lawyers there too. I think retraining and revamping the system, and maybe taking care of using scientific means to investigate matters will allow for a better running of that institution. Because what we have now as presently constituted is one that leaves a lot to be desired. And I say this advisedly. I say it advisedly because the commission is one that is respected. Before now, I mean, from 2003, 2004, when the institution was established, it came on board with high esteem, and it was without blemish. But today, you cannot say that of the institution. There have been a lot of issues that have gone through between the Office of the Attorney General and that of the chairman of the EFCC. We saw how Magu left the office. He was always having clash with the then Attorney General of the Federation and all that, as regards issues of properties forfeited and properties that the court have asked the suspect to forfeit to the commission. The sale of it and the management of it and all that became a problem. So the institution should be one that should be rejigged by this new administration. If it passes that the new appointment stands, a lot of work needs to be done. I mean, this issue of qualification and no qualification is a list of the issues we should be discussing. The issues of cleaning up that institution, which is
and I want to get to that cleaning up, because it's sort of shocking to see how somehow EFCC also now has a not so good image, in polity. There have been a lot of reports as to EFCC breaking into the home, or EFCC agents breaking into the homes of Nigerians. But I want to get to that shortly. They will say that in the eyes of security agencies or security agents, you are guilty until proven innocent. But in the eyes of the law, you are innocent until proven guilty. And I want to ask you if that will reflect, or because it is now a lawyer, we're going to see that a reduction in media trial in the country.
If he's able to manage and retrain the operatives from departments to departments on the issues of human rights, okay, if he's able to do that, because one of the issues also is that the person in question is not a human rights lawyer in the real sense of it. He's a lawyer that has considerable experience in fraud-related cases. That is not to say he cannot accentuate the issues of human rights. The issue of human rights is critical and it cuts across every facet of the human experience. So that issue is one that he needs to put, because he should not take it as a situation where he gets this appointment and then the focus will not be on his line of experience, which has to do with fraud and problem activities and all that, which is good. But he should, as a matter of general purpose, okay, accentuate the issue of human rights, because there is where the Commission is getting the bad name from, the way citizens are treated. Okay, every citizen is presumed innocent until the contrary is proven. No matter who you are as an EFCC operative, it is a constitutional matter. The Constitution says so. And because the Constitution says so, whoever is the leader of the EFCC is going to take an oath, swear by the Constitution to defend that Constitution. Therefore, Chapter 4 of the Constitution talk about the human rights must be respected and protected because are inalienable rights of citizens. I know that there are a lot of citizens who are doing the wrong things, who are fraudulent, and they are all over the place, giving the country a bad name by doing fraud and all that. That is given. But that is not the reason why everyone who is a suspect should be subjected to harrowing experience to the point that our humanity is taken down. The rights we have under the law is stripped of the citizen. And then what you have left is brigandage and abuse of power and processes. Then the institution itself would have also fallen into the same problem that it was created to solve. The problem it was created to solve is to ensure that it clean up the system in a way that citizens will not be involved in financial and economic crimes. And where they are involved in financial and economic crimes, they should be apprehended, prosecuted, convicted if they are found guilty, or freed where they are not involved. That is what the process should be. But once it gets to a point where the operatives now take it personal and begin to, get hard on citizens, even when there are no evidence to prove that they are guilty of the action or whatever the allegations are, that is where the problem is. So we should see a Nigerian as first a human being, then a citizen. Then before you investigate to find out what, sometimes during investigation, you find operatives telling you that you committed the offense. I mean, you have not been tried, but sometimes they turn to the court, they turn to the judge, they turn to everything. And that is wrong. Not all of us in this country are criminals, okay? And even where you have criminals are not just convicted by allegations. Suspicion, however strong, cannot take the place of evidence. That's the law. So the people, the citizens must have their own way. The institution too must have its own way. But the way of the institution and the will of the citizen must be guided by the Constitution. The Constitution is the grand norm, and it is supreme. The Constitution supersedes the EFCC Act. The Constitution supersedes the EFCC Act. So whatever it is that the Constitution has said about the citizen, the EFCC Act cannot truncate it.
And there is a process, like you have said, to these things. Someone is first a suspect, there has to be investigation done. Warrant for arrest, and there has to be human rights respected in the process of arrest and prosecution. But I also wanted to ask you what the biggest mandate is before the new EFCC chairman.
The biggest mandate before him?
Yes, in your own opinion.
Yeah, the biggest mandate I see before him is to, first of all, manage the EFCC and make it corruption-free. Because you see this corruption that EFCC fights, economic and financial crime, it fights outside. It also have it inside. It have it inside. Yes, that is the reason the former EFCC chairman who just resigned. Part of there are allegations of financial impropriety and abuse of office. Okay, the one before him had the same issue. Okay, so if the EFCC want to be respected, the greatest mandate is, first of all, to clean the institution inside out. Okay, because Lord Denning said in UAC versus Mark 4 that if a matter is void in law is a nullity, as you cannot put something on nothing and expect it to stand if you collapse. If the EFCC want to fight corruption, it should first of all exfoliate itself of corruption. Okay? Allegations of corruption should not be found around any of the leaders of the organization or any operative at all. So once that is done, then equities, the hands of equity is now clean. The person who is coming to equity now have a clean hand. You must come to equity with clean hands. So then you can now have the moral rectitude to stand on the ground of integrity and uprightness to then fight corruption to its logical conclusion. Because
and where should that cleanup, where should it begin?
That cleanup should begin with the number one, the chairman of that office. Okay, from there down to the last person in that office, they must all be extricated from matters of corruption. Because as we speak now, the reason why the former chairman left has to do with corruption. The one before him has to do with corruption. And this is an agency charged with the responsibility to fight corruption. You cannot put something on nothing and expect it to stand. So there's a sense in which the institution will have to clean itself and come out whole. When it does that, then it will not have the moral rectitude and the authority under every circumstance, both legal and moral, to go out there and fight corruption squarely in a way that it is not influenced, it does its job without fear or favor, and it goes after whoever, however big or small you are, that has been involved in financial or economic crime. That is the way this institution started. When it started on that footing. But you and I know that that cannot be said of it today, especially when their leaders are now being fingered for, having been enmeshed in corruption tendencies. That is not good for institution. It's not healthy at all. If we have to build a strong institution, we'll build a strong institution on the strength of the leadership of that strong institution. Strong institutions also mean strong persons who are patriotic, who are ready to ensure that this country changes for good. And the only way that can be done is that there must be a cleanup inside out. Because if this new leader starts this administration with the term as business as usual, it means that the institution will not go further than it has gone already, because there's a serious decline. And that decline, it is the responsibility of the leadership to revamp it, to give it a facelift, give it a new look, and ensure that everyone buy into that vision, and that is how to lead. So it will not be henceforth zero tolerance to every issue that will affect the institution internally in the eyes of the right-thinking members of society must be addressed. And that will mean total cleanup. There must be reorientation, and the workers there must have a new way of doing things. Absolutely. Operations and everything. So until that is done, if we assume this responsibility again with business as usual, then you cannot go beyond what you already have on ground in the institution.
Well, we will see how it goes. We're waiting for the Senate confirmation of Olukoyede. We'll see how that goes and how well he does in office. Thank you so much. It's always a pleasure speaking with you, Evans Ofeli.
You're welcome. Thank you.
All right, that's Standpoint. Thanks for watching. I am Precious Amayo.